So give me one more second, everyone. I just want to make sure that this is going live out to YouTube, and then we'll be good to go. So hang on, everyone. And let me just double check. And I do see it. All right. So I think we are live out there, Guy. I think it worked. And we can go ahead and get started.
I am ready when you are.
All right, so I'll start us off by reading the title and the key lesson for tonight, and then I'll hand it over to Guy, and I'll come back on after his talk.
Okay.
Our topic for tonight is release yourself from the pain of paralyzing resistance. And here's the key lesson. There is no new resistance, regardless how fresh the nature of a negative state, be it fear, anger, frustration, or regret. The only thing that's actually changed in any seemingly new painful moment is what's being blamed for its appearance. All right, Guy, I'll be back on after your talk.
Okay. Let me get myself squared away here. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you have found a way to join us this evening, or if it's not live, wherever you are, whatever day or time it is. It's always good to gather in the name of wanting to understand the truth of ourselves, so that for the truths that we discover, we can begin to discover parts of ourselves that we would never know otherwise if we weren't brought into moments where, and certainly by no wish of our own, we run into events that run completely counter to what we would will, and we find ourselves at odds with life, to put it mildly. Now, before I get into the ideas that I want to present, I just want to say a couple quick things. First, I'm in Florida at my daughter's house, my wife and I, and one of the reasons I'm here is because I do intend to figure out a way to give some talks in Florida, and if that's of interest to you, you can fire off a note to Kate and let her know, so we can certainly keep you up to date with that. Won't happen right away. Possibly this winter would be a good time for that to start. Secondly, another little announcement is that I never realized, because I wasn't living it, that most of you who are listening to me on the East Coast, it's 10 o'clock and I'm going to go till 11 or 11:30. That's just too late. So we're going to change our schedule sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we're going to start our Wednesday night's talk on the Pacific Coast at 6. So it'll be 9 p.m. your time, and we'll be done by 10:15. That's a decent hour, and I hope that that change will enable most of you to join us, especially once those of you who thought it was too late learn the truth of that change. And lastly, this. I'm not sitting in my usual classroom, the foundation, with the men and women that gather to hear in person. I trust that many of them will be online, and I trust that those of you who have been with me before on a Wednesday night know that we call it Discovery Wednesday. Discovery Wednesdays are the evenings that we use to interact with each other, where I pose certain ideas, and then I attempt as best I can to bring you into the topic so that we can experience directly, together, the understanding that we can only gather together when we see how common our experiences of each moment actually is. So when I bring you in, I do urge you and ask you to please, everyone, chime in. Add your comments when it becomes appropriate. That's it. So, I want to say something to set this material into motion. And maybe it's too long in coming, although I know I've always intimated it, but I want to be crystal clear. It is unbelievably frustrating when you hear certain ideas and you know they are true, and then find yourself absolutely unable to do anything at all with those ideas. For the most part, when we are captured by some unwanted moment to our topic, which is to be released from this paralyzed resistance that we have to these moments. we are like babes. If we're honest with ourselves, we can see that whatever that moment is that's come over us, we can't even remember what it is that we're supposed to do, because all we're remembering in those moments is what our reactions are telling us is the cause of the conflict we're in. So that in moments where we are suddenly met with what we don't want, people saying, doing, and we'll get into this, our knee-jerk mechanical reaction to those moments is always to hand ourselves over to what that part of our consciousness, giving that reaction from, tells us, well, he's blamed, this is to blame, I knew it, all those commentaries that come up inside of this sleeping mind that basically convince us, which is an important idea, that we somehow know what's happened. And the reason it's so important to realize, as we'll get into it, that you don't know what's happened. What you know is what your consciousness is telling you has happened. And your consciousness, my consciousness, doesn't know doodly. All it knows is what it does in the moment when it feels threatened by something, when something is unwanted or uncomfortable. All it knows to do is to go into that reactive mode. And as it goes into that reactive mode, it remands us over. It takes us into its memories, so that we are remembering that moment through the eyes of a mind that have met similar situations and run into the same paralyzing resistance. And we never suspect in that moment that what's happened to us has nothing whatsoever to do with the moment itself, but rather with an unconscious identification with a body of old memories, old reactions that are there seemingly to tell us what's happened, and then seemingly what we have to do so we can escape that feeling of being all bound up. You know what it's like to be negative, tense, all of that going on at once. So I want to stipulate clear at the beginning, and I hope that you have more and more opportunities to experience this. In that moment, words are useless. That whatever you're, oh, please help me, whatever it is that comes out of that mouth that is fed by this mind is doing nothing other than confirming to that consciousness that the reason the moment is like it is, the content of this conflict, is because the condition is responsible for the pain that you're in. And once that's set, and it almost always is mechanically, instantaneously, then we are set, if you will, on a course that can do nothing other than take us back into that same mindset that will again and again and again, much to the point of these opening comments, bring us to these moments where you go, oh my God, now what's going to happen? And in every moment where our attention is seized by that resistance, that is how far away we are from realizing that the condition is not responsible for the conflict we're feeling, but rather, and the purpose of all the teachings, is that there is something in this consciousness that does not know itself, but that believes it does know itself through the conditions it blames for the content of itself, and we are asleep and lost in that world with no idea whatsoever that that's going on. So, I want to bring you in early into this talk. Let's bring up our list if we can, Eric, and I don't know that I'm not going to be able to see it. Oh, I will be able to see it. Marvelous. Here is what we're going to work on together, and I'll go over it with you and prime the pump, as I like to say. What would be one of those unexpected, unwanted moments in life where you are likely to find yourself filled with, if not virtually paralyzed by, some form of painful resistance to what has just unfolded before your disbelieving eyes? Let me repeat it. What would be one of those unexpected, unwanted moments in life where you are likely to find yourself filled with, if not virtually paralyzed by, some form of painful resistance to what has just unfolded before your disbelieving eyes? I want to strengthen one point here before I start bringing you into the list. And Kate, I guess I'll see it on what you're going to do here, or How will I see what people send in? You post them as it comes up? Great. All right. So don't go too quick now because I want to bring everybody in. I want to strengthen this idea of paralyzed by resistance. We may not think of ourselves like that, but in that moment where suddenly you are seized by some fear, some worry, some person that's problematic, in that moment where we are seized by what seems to be the moment, all of our higher functions locked away. We can't think in any other terms other than what to do about what we see as the problem. The only emotions we know are negative and always slanted towards blame, so that everything about us is locked up. And when we're locked up like that, the more we're locked up, the more this consciousness that has locked us into that death grip with denying what the moment is saying, bringing, the more we fight with that, the more resistance we feel. The more resistance we feel, the more we're paralyzed. Have you ever found yourself, sitting someplace and staring into space like some kind of zombie because your mind is spinning with what does this mean and what am I going to do? Found yourself paralyzed, meaning the only thing that I can bring up in this moment is anger, frustration, or blame. So I'm locked into negative emotions. So that's what I want to talk about. This moment where we find ourselves paralyzed by this resistance. So let's get into it, you and I. I'll give you a couple of these moments where one finds themselves virtually paralyzed by some form of painful resistance. Anytime somebody disrespects us, what happens inside of us? We would say instantaneous defensiveness. Now, that instantaneous defensiveness seems intelligent to the consciousness. But the fact that we're instantaneously defensive means we are instantaneously cut off from anything other than trying to protect the part of ourselves that feels like it's been disrespected. So instantaneous resistance to any feeling of being disrespected. How about you wake up and something's happened, you go someplace. I'll give you an example. When my wife and I got here to Florida, we had expected a certain amount of things that would be done, and bless our daughter's heart, she killed herself getting ready. But and I take full responsibility for this. Somehow I have an effect on electronics, and I'm not kidding. I can sometimes radio stations will go down. I don't know what all it's about, but I literally blew the fuse in my living quarters, and then we couldn't get anything up. I wasn't even sure we were going to be able to do this. Now here I am looking at all the things that I was hoping for, expecting this nice relaxed time, and instead I'm meeting all of these problems. Now, when you run into something like that, what happens to you? Paralysis by resistance. Resistance, a form of paralysis. So now, with those examples in mind, let's bring you in and see what you have to say about those moments where you feel that. Chris says, anytime someone challenges me. Let's go. Paul, someone speaks to me in an attacking way. We get that. That's what we were talking about. Disrespects me. Looking at the list still. Randall, yeah, somebody else said. Linda also said that. A health problem. A health problem. Many years ago, and I'll keep going through the list. Many years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. You talk about instantaneous paralysis by resistance, because the big C, all those things running through your mind, what it means, what's going to happen. So, of course, anytime that we find ourselves in a threatening health condition, all we know to do is resist the condition for the fear of what it means to who we are and what we thought ourselves to be. Debbie, I've been paralyzed when someone said something I totally didn't expect. How about you hear that someone's betrayed you? Talk about paralysis. That moment, our mind, listen, paralysis, our mind can do nothing other than pick up on the parts of that moment and that person that justify the pain that we feel towards them in that moment. John said, paralysis, resistance by resistance, I made a big mistake. Anytime we make big mistakes, the fact is, it isn't that we made a mistake that causes this resistance. The resistance is that somebody may find out that I made that mistake, and I'm not the kind of person who makes those mistakes. Jane says, watching the news. Yeah, that's a big one. And I might just add that most of us watch the news so that we can feel that kind of pain. We say, no, we're interested in life. If we were interested in life, we would be attending to the consciousness that becomes a captive of the news instead of looking at the news and then blaming our unconscious reactions for them. We blame the news for our resistance to it. Gino, bad news from the doctor. Are we on a theme here? Is this an older group? Claudia says, feelings of inadequacy. That's a big one, isn't it? I failed at this. I couldn't get it across. And when I feel inadequate, I shut down. I shut down because my mind seizes on what's wrong with me. And basically, I am filled with resistance to the judgment of myself. In fact, Dan, I just wrote that, being judged. When I judge myself, I resist my own judgment. Try to see how circular this kind of life is, what this consciousness is doing. Anybody else coming on? Other forms of suddenly being seized by resistance. Anybody? I'll wait. Julie says, oh yeah, that's a big one. Being unheard, not picked for the team, left out. Of course, resistance immediately. And does that resistance not include judgment and blame of those for not seeing that we should have been first on the team? Nick, being disobeyed. Yeah, that's a big one, because we do expect everyone and everything to obey us. And that's really to the heart of this, isn't it? Because when the moment doesn't do as we expect it to do, we feel like life itself is disobeying our wishes. Heidi, my adult father visits and asks anything of me that Heidi thinks is unreasonable. Suffice it to say that someone that I want to love me doesn't show that love the way I want it to be shown. So there's resistance and blame, a lot of judgment. John Watson, crazy drivers. Yeah, that's big. Okay. All right. So look, we got 15 or 20, maybe more of these. You can still put a couple in there if you want to. I just want to show you something that we can see ourselves so we can begin to have a different relationship to our own resistance. Yes, Ellen, fear of the future, someone questioning the quality of my work. All of these things produce resistance. Take a nice deep breath. Now, about the last thing that ever occurs to any of us, especially in the throes of those unwanted moments. And when I say in the throes of those unwanted moments, given that our negative reaction, as I said before, immediately identifies who's to blame for it, we never even suspect that we don't know the actual source of that resistance that is spreading through our body like some kind of fast-acting poison. And I say fast-acting poison because that energy, as it spreads through the body, literally, as I said earlier, paralyzes all of our higher faculties. And if that's not clear what I mean by all of our higher faculties, look what we do to ourselves and to others when we're filled with that resistance. Is there compassion in resistance? Do you care what anybody else is going through when you're filled with that kind of resistance? Or does the moment of that resistance, the onset of it, say, I'm the only one in the world that matters, and everything else can go to heck in a handbasket as long as I get through this moment, which I've identified as being the way people are talking to me, the way the moment's unfolding, all of the things that we outlined on our list. So we have no awareness in those moments, as I outlined, what it is that we're doing to ourselves or others. We can all see this, I trust. Now, if we were online, I'd be able to get some comments from you, but I'm just going to assume that you understand that that's so. Transition. We're going to look at something important now. There can be no paralyzing, I'll repeat the word, there can be no paralyzing sense of being what? Fully opposed to the moment, because isn't that what we are? I am fully opposed to this moment. And this painful resistance that we have, it cannot be there in the same moment, meaning that painful resistance that we're experiencing is there because we brought into that moment with us some form of insistence that we have no idea that we walk around with. This is key. I'm going to build on this. That moment filled with resistance, my mind says it's because of the condition that reaction points to as being responsible. And I'm saying, can we back up just a little bit, have a little awareness to recognize how is in the world that I would ever have this kind of resistance to any moment unless I was meeting that moment, going into it, bringing with me some kind of demands, some form of unconscious conditioned desire that I was so identified with that when something challenged it, the only thing that consciousness that was identified with the way things should go, only thing it could do is say, that's not going that way, and then shut down. Just shut down. Shut down because, and this is a little deeper than I want to get into, because in that moment, a conflict that is innate in an unconscious mind, a conflict that is innate in an unconscious mind. What is the innate conflict in an unconscious mind other than one side of it says everything needs to be like this, and then when nothing is like what it says it should be, then it is in conflict with its own demands. So its conflict isn't because of the condition. Its conflict is born out of the fact that it comes into that moment conditioned with the idea that everything should be how it wants it to be, or there's something wrong with the moment. That is an innate conflict in that consciousness. So that consciousness is already in conflict. It just doesn't know it. Haven't you ever marveled at how you can be happy as a clam, swimming along, this is beautiful, everything's great, and then somebody does this, or you look over here and you see that, and in the heartbeat, paralyzed. Again, that slow acting poison of negativity pumping through the system. And as it pumps through and the system shuts down, the consciousness that creates that negativity then starts to blame the circumstances so that it can escape poisoning itself. And the more it resists the condition, the more it poisons itself. Why? To the point of this first part of the talk. What did I bring into the moment with me? What came in through the door, into that business meeting, in my car driving? What was it that we brought with us into that moment? Here we go. I've got a quiz. Given what we're looking at, I want to promise you something, and I never make promises. I want to promise that if you can answer the question that I'm about to ask, I want to promise you that you will be on your way to being released from any form of resistance-induced, paralysis-induced resistance. You will be on your way to liberation if you can answer this question. You ready? That's how sure I am that the question won't be answered. I'm going to go through this slowly. If insistence creates resistance, and resistance is itself a creation of insistence, then how can either of those opposites bring an end to the unwanted appearance of the other? I'm going to read it again, then I'm going to give you some examples. If insistence creates resistance, and resistance is itself a creation of insistence, then how can either of these opposites bring an end to the unwanted appearance of its other? I trust you understand the question. I'll give you an example. If I insist that you look at me, treat me, speak to me in a certain way, and you don't do that, what's my reaction to you? If you don't live up to what I demand you live up to, I don't think to myself, I demand that you treat me this way, but the minute you don't, what happens when I have an insistence that you look at me, talk to me, treat me in a certain way? What happens if you don't do it? Instantaneous resistance. You can't argue it. What happens when any moment doesn't go the way, again, I have to back up. It doesn't go the way I came into that moment already knowing how it should be. This is a key idea. We don't think to ourselves we're walking around knowing how things should unfold. But we sure run into the moment where it's clear to us that we think we do know how things should unfold anytime the moment doesn't unfold the way we've demanded it go, so to confirm who and what we think we are and what we want. So if I insist that you treat me a certain way, I will resist you when you don't. And if I resist you, it's only because you are not acting as I imagine you should. If insistence creates resistance, and resistance is itself a creation of insistence, how can either one of those opposites ever bring an end to each other? Can resisting a moment ever change the fact that I live with the insistence that caused it? Can the insistence I have going into a moment ever change the fact that I'm invariably going to meet something that resists it? Insistence and resistance are tied together at the hip. They do not exist apart from each other. If you knew that, what would happen when you run into any moment where suddenly there's all this resistance? You would understand there's no point in me going back and trying to figure out what to do so that I can get rid of this pain, because anything I figure out what to do to get rid of this pain I'm in is yet another demand on the moment intended to save me, when it's not saving me at all. It's just grinding in and further conditioning this insistence that I have that I never suffer. Because that's at the root of it. There's something in us that insists we don't suffer. It's built into every desire that was ever formulated from the time we took a body, all the way through our adulthood, becoming further and more deeply conditioned, so that anything, any moment that comes that runs counter to what we have expected it to be. And again, there is no expectation without identification. Write it down. There is no expectation without identification. So that the desire inherent in the expectation cannot be separated from the dark resistance we have to those moments where suddenly I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm not supposed to be in pain. My life is not meant to have pain in it. That's what all of my expectations and desires are about, all the way down the line. And here I am once again, reduced to a man or a woman who is paralyzed, trying to figure out what happened, what do I do, and how do I get rid of this pain? And every time we come to the next solution to get rid of the pain born out of the conflict in this consciousness, sometimes I wish it were possible for me just to download this understanding so you didn't have to struggle with it at all. But without that struggle, you'll never see the truth of it. We're forever trying to escape our own consciousness without any hint whatsoever that that's all of the futility we experience, because it doesn't matter how many times we run into moments we resist people that are problematic, painful situations, because there's always a solution. There's always the next moment, next day, a week from now, 10 years from now. I'll be past that. I'll be free of this pain. And I'm trying to get you to see as best I'm able to do it, that you're never past the pain of a consciousness that creates the pain for itself with everything it becomes identified with. Where does that leave us if I understand that? Mr. Howard used to say the medicine is bitter, but it heals. So here's the healing. I hope that you can see it that way. Take a nice deep breath, because this is necessarily strong, not bitter. You ready? There's nothing real that you or I can do to bring an end to that suffering. There's nothing real that you and I can do to bring to that suffering, because the you, the me, that wants to bring an end to it is simply the other side of that moment that we're trying to escape. I don't want this moment. So I believe that I can bring the end to the pain of not wanting it by wanting something else. Because if I don't want this, I clearly want something else. And what do I want? I want that to go away. I want you to be different. I want me to be different. I can't stand myself when I'm like this. You fill in the blank. The endless judgment of people, places, and possessions just never stops. Why? Because that mind believes that it can bring an end to the pain it's in, because it can't see the reason it's in the pain it's in is because of the demand it came into the moment with. So it's fighting itself. It's set against itself. This is in all Scripture. Christ himself spoke of it endlessly. This idea that somehow or other, if I just can struggle to escape, to change, or control this, I'll be free. Because that's what we do. We get paralyzed, and then the mind begins to figure out what to do. It sets these plans in motion, and we're not throwing that away. I will, before this talk is over, clarify some of that. So we're realizing that this is not pie in the sky bull. I'm telling you a fact. And you see it or you don't. And if you don't see it now, God help you downstream, you see it, and then you can come back and we can look at this more deeply together so we can begin to free ourselves from the pattern of this prison mind that is forever promising escapes, but doing it by building out the cell walls, by building out the walls. I talked about this in great depth on Sunday morning. What is the other side of any paralyzing resistance? I'm asking again before I get into summary. What is the other side of any moment of paralyzing resistance? You should know the answer by now. The other side of any paralyzing resistance is some form of unseen insistence. An unseen insistence that is inescapably inherent in this consciousness before the condition comes along and challenges it. Let's take another tact here for a moment. Take a deep breath. Let's look at this so we can start to see that if you've understood me, and this is what happens, the more you actually wake up to your consciousness, meaning you become aware of what you have been unconscious to in yourself, the more you see the absolute futility of allowing any part of you that has reacted to a moment to tell you how to resolve the moment it reacted to. You don't try to be spiritual. you realize anything that has having this reaction is inseparable from the consciousness that's producing it. But in this divided state, you and I believe that I am other than what my reaction is telling me has happened. So there's the moment, what I'm reacting to. Then there's me, innocent. I've got nothing to do with this resistance. If you weren't that way, if they weren't like that, I wouldn't be experiencing this paralyzing pain. And I'm trying to bring you to see, as difficult, as bitter as it may seem at first, that that's not the case. That the real case, and what we need to be conscious of gradually, is that there's always some form of unseen insistence that is inherent in every last one of these moments that we don't want, because we are a, what's the word that I want? We are a storehouse of uninvestigated, unconsciously formed desires. And there is no desire that isn't attended to by the identity connected to that desire. Every unconscious desire, and we're not going back into the past, I'm just saying, look at this with me. I've always been, you fill in the blanks, the kind of person who people treat this way, or I've been someone who people genuinely respect. It makes no difference what it is that our mind has collected as a body of memories. They go into the moment with us, and when anything jars who and what we think we are or how we should be treated, there's a summary resistance. The resistance is not to the event. The event is revealing the consciousness that is conditioned and a captive of those desires. And it doesn't know it. We don't know. We walk around spring-loaded with a suffering that is just going to jump out of us the minute that any moment comes down the line that doesn't line up with what we expected, not knowing we walked into that moment expecting it. Disappointments, frustrations, impatience, blame, You can't name a negative state that doesn't have and begin with some form of resistance at its root. There is no negative reaction without resistance. We always keep listening to the negative reaction telling us what caused it, when what we have to do, as Christ said, metanoia, is turn around and see what has caused this resistance is that something in us insists that the moment not be the way it is. That simple. You can't study that enough. You can't hear that enough. Because at some point when it finally dawns on you and that moment goes left instead of right or right instead of left, there will be something that will finally have accumulated a certain memory, spiritual memory, and you'll feel everything pulling on you, just like I'm describing, creating this poison that spreads through the system, paralyzing us in those lower states. And for that split second, as you're sitting there, you'll realize that this moment that ordinarily is a nightmare to you is actually a moment come to awaken you from the nightmare of living in an unconscious mind that dreams its life into existence and then hates anything that awakens it from the dream. Let's get into some transition here. I'm not even sure. I started at what, 10? So, okay, I'm all right. Again, I'm in a new circumstance, so bear with me. I hope that you're able to get this wherever it's being streamed. It's amazing, actually, that we can do this. You want to write something down encouraging, not that everything that I said isn't, because we're talking about the true negation of an unconscious nature. An unconscious nature can't negate itself. It's busy saying everything is causing it to be negative. Only an awareness of this consciousness can bring that consciousness into a place where it begins for understanding itself that it can no longer be itself. It can't act like that anymore. It can't do those things anymore. And slowly by surely, we begin to pass from that consciousness. We begin to die to ourselves, quite literally. And in the passing of ourselves, we begin to realize, as part of that passage, all of this beautiful process that was put in place so that we could actually go through that. The last thing that occurs to any of us when we're paralyzed with resistance is that there is a divine intelligence full of love and the essence of justice itself that has brought that moment to you for the purpose of helping you understand that you need to begin this process of changing. Write this down. Everything in existence, meaning everything, every moment in our life, passes, but only if we'll let it. Everything in our life, every unwanted moment passes, but only if we let it. This is key. See, we never let the moment pass because we're too busy telling ourselves how we have to get past that moment. So we never see that nature, life itself, the cosmos, is always bringing into existence some new form of creation. And every new creation that comes into existence, by the fact that it is brought into existence, is changed the moment it takes shape and form in existence. So that moment, when that moment comes, it's already changing. And if you get that idea, and I don't have enough time to spend on it, that if it's true that everything in life is ceaselessly changing because there is a constantly timeless will acting on it, a celestial will acting on all that is common, bringing what is active into what is passive, and in that moment a new conception is born, then if that's true with everything from a leaf all the way to a star, why in the name of God wouldn't that be true when it comes to our consciousness? And it is true when it comes to our consciousness. Our consciousness is we're never meant to be locked down, paralyzed. Mind pointed to this, that, and the other, this problem, this person, what am I? That's not, that feels natural to us, but there could be nothing more unnatural than dwelling on something you don't want. And yet, if you're honest with me, that's all we pretty much know to do. Because the more I dwell on what I don't want, meaning the more I resist the moment I don't want, the more my mind is very fertile with coming up ways to realize and reconcile how I get out of the moment I don't want. But I fail to see that the more I don't want something, the more I feel like I'm stuck someplace. And it never dawns on me that my solutions to resistance are the next form of insistence. The solutions to my resistance are the next desires. I desire to be free of the resistance. The resistance exists because of insistence, and the insistence is because I'm identified with a desire. I hope I'm making sense to you. I'm trying to show you a rather beautiful big picture that if we would just let the moment do what the moment came to do, which is to produce this beautiful change in our consciousness, then in that moment we would recognize that each of those moments, and this is key, that it's not written that I have to suffer them the way I do. How we experience these unwanted moments is determined completely by who, or rather what part of us meets that moment. How we experience any given moment is not determined by the condition, that's what we believe, but it is determined by the level of consciousness that is brought into that moment by that moment. So that any event, and we know this, any one event can seem to be endlessly painful. I talk to men and women all the time around the world. They're still living the the endless summer. That was a good old surf movie. We're still living the endless suffering. Thinking about what she did, why they didn't do this, how come that happened the way it did. And then out of all that resistance to what essentially is our consciousness bringing up something that it hopes to change, but the more it brings it up, the more crystallized it becomes, so that we have an endless suffering. Because that consciousness won't let anything pass, because it requires having that pain so that it knows what to do to save itself. It's quite crazy. We can have something that is endlessly painful, or we can use that moment, what life reveals to us in our relationship. So rather than endlessly painful, it becomes endlessly enlightening. Which would you prefer? Endlessly painful, which is what resisting the moment is, because out of resistance, behind it is insistence. The insistence gives rise to the resistance. Resistance rise to desire, more identification, more resistance. Down and down and down we go. And where we stop, God only knows. But if you have become aware of that at all, I used to tell a story about this man. He would be sitting in his apartment someplace, and there'd be a knock at the door, and maybe he ordered pizza, I don't know. And he opens the door, and like 8 guys run in and grab him, put him in a straitjacket, and haul him off someplace. And he spends whatever time he does there trying to good behavior, and he gets released. And there's always this knock at the door, isn't there? Isn't there always that moment where suddenly, oh no, this isn't right? Why is that? And our life evaporates. Or more importantly, it isn't so much that our life evaporates as it takes on the form of some kind of evisceration, where we're taken and picked up, and everything about our life is then determined by something that's happened outside of us. We're not meant as human beings to live where we look at the world around us and let it tell us who we are or how we're meant to behave. We're meant to understand that this consciousness can't be separated from the reactions it has. So that if we begin to understand the reaction, the consciousness, it's part of this change. That's what the moment is. The moment has come to act upon what no longer serves the purpose of our consciousness, individually and collectively. Each moment, the will of the divine comes into the will of this earth for the purpose of introducing this earth, this consciousness, to what is absolutely antithetical to its development, individually and collectively, because you can't separate them. So here I am, and here comes this moment, and what do? No, 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 no. Which is the same as denying the possibility of using the moment that formerly spread poison through this body to help it realize completely new possibilities that cannot be understood in any other way until that consciousness begins to see itself, awaken to itself, and begin to endure itself because it understands it cannot and must not do anything other than that. That's called conscious suffering. Conscious suffering is the realization that an unconscious nature keeps recreating itself, hoping to escape itself. Unconscious suffering is identifying with everything that that consciousness does to escape itself. It can't do it. Now, I don't know why it takes so long to figure that out, but it does, and that's okay. That's why I started the talk the way I did, was to try to get this idea across. Look, you're going to go through these things. You can't escape. See, that's it, isn't it? I even said you can't escape. That's how our mind works. I'm going to escape the doldrums of my life when I retire. No, you'll be the same dull person when you retire that you were hoping to find a time when you'd be free. Freedom isn't some time to come. Freedom is the awakening of a consciousness to its own captivity and then seeing its captivity, dying to it on the spot to whatever extent that awareness makes possible. And there's freedom because I'm no longer the same person that experienced that resistance 10 seconds ago. Imagine. I'm no longer that person because I see the futility of being that man, the futility of taking thought for tomorrow, the futility of trying to get others to affirm or confirm me the way I want to be. All of that's an absolute waste of time. And eventually, and that's why we have this work, eventually we see it. If we're willing to. I mean, that's the key, isn't it? So, to the point, we can have endlessly painful moments that go on, or we can have endless enlightenment. Every moment, a new insight. Every moment, what? The eyes that saw what they used to see and resist them, now the eyes see the reason for that moment is so that the consciousness, the eyes that see them, can become new eyes. Not someone who is remade in the image of their own resistance, but someone who sees what something wants to make me back into what I was. It wants to strengthen it, cement it, crystallize me. And to see as all that's going on is to do what? Awareness won't take part in its own defeat, is to step back and then become the observer of that consciousness instead of unconsciously serving the resistance that it spills out every time some moment comes that it doesn't want. Now, I've got about 7 minutes left, so I said I would, and I'm going to. I want to give you some practical ways to deal with this. In the end, in which in one respect there is no end, that's the beauty of it. In the end, your life will change in direct proportion to your willingness to see that if you're trying to change it, you're crystallizing it. In the end, change is effortless because you've seen that every effort you make to change your life just creates a form of insistence, and that insistence will meet the resistance it does, and you go round and round because insistence and resistance are twin brothers. One cannot change the other. You can't get rid of what you desire by resisting it, and certainly what you resist creates new desires. And it's not a lost cause. Don't let anything in your mind tell you this is, I don't understand. You do fully understand this. Our life is the evidence of this understanding. We just have to be willing to get into it and mix it up a little bit when these moments come, which is to the last part, a summary and exercise. So let's just say for the sake of it, I go bang. What is bang? Oh my God. It just falls on you. Or some slow building bombshell of an event. We know both of those. We're not immune to either one. Bang, or a slowly lit fuse on a bombshell event that we can see coming and there's dread, whatever it might be. So in that moment, and when I was noodling out these things, I'd never used the expression before. In those moments where resistance comes like that, we're in the fog of war. Have you ever heard that expression? The fog of war? I don't know who made it up, but I think it has something to do with how mechanical and unconscious this whole nature becomes when it's suddenly beset upon by some kind of threat. God help the men and women who have given their lives in the fog of war. in the fog of war, what's the first thing that happens in the fog of that resistance? I haven't time to bring you in. What's the first thing that happens? For us now, we always do the same thing. We're confronted with a condition that runs against what we wanted or hoped for. And the moment that happens, we're remanded back over to the same consciousness that will repeat that. But now we have a new first. And I talked about this in depth last week. And all the talks are recorded. They're all available, I'm sure, for free. You can listen to any of this. Our first task in life is to remember the truth of ourselves. To remember the truth of ourselves. What does that mean, to remember the truth? I have to see that the first action I'm taking up is that something in me is remembering what's happened. It's like, I've been here before. I've had this disappointment. I've run into these situations. I've been here 100 times. Something in me tells me what has happened. That memory belongs to the unconscious nature that is actually responsible for the condition it's blaming. We're actually fighting with our own memory. Can you imagine that? One day you'll see it. Resistance is fighting with one of our own memories. But we don't know it's a memory. But when we can remember to remember, then in that moment we can be a little bit present so that we can begin to realize, you know what? I can see, I'm convinced I have every right to hate. I have every right to feel sorry for myself. I have every right to be upset. I have the right. You do. You have the right to destroy yourself, which is what happens when we remain unconscious human beings. You want to know why the world is the way it is? Because everyone in this world has the right to be negative. Failing to see that the more right I am in my negativity, the worse the world becomes, because all that does is put me at odds with everyone and everything that challenges what I say is my right. And it's my right that you treat me the way you do. It's my right that I own the things I do. All of those are pipe dreams that belong to a nature in the dark of itself that continues to create for itself the conflict it tries to escape through the next dream it has. So here's to remember myself. Watch me. First thing that happens in resistance is the chest, you stop breathing. I mean, quite literally. You'll see it if you've never seen it before. Any moment of fear, tension. First thing to remember. Let me be aware of this tension that's coming over me. That's the paralysis, isn't it? Justified paralysis by a mind asleep to what it is producing out of itself. Let me bring myself back as best I can, a few deep breaths, so that instead of being flooded with that resistance, I'm going to deliberately relax from it. I'm going to deliberately relax from that resistance. Now, listen to me. I started the talk with this. It will take a very long time before you are ever actually able, in the moment where all that's going down, for you to come back to yourself and realize this consciousness is about to put me in a cage. And my first task is to remember that's what it wants to do, because it's at odds with anything that it doesn't want. So I'm just going to do the very best I can to relax from thought. I'm going to relax from memory, from everything that's yapping at me, everything that's pulling on me. I'm just going to relax. And those thoughts, those feelings, all of those conditioned things, they have no authority over you. None. They never have, other than we refuse to let things pass by because we cling to our reaction to them. We're going to let the moment pass. And the reason it's so hard to let the moment pass is because if the moment passes, guess who's going with it? This consciousness that can't let anything pass. So, first things first, I'm going to bring myself back. I'm going to relax a little bit, and I'm going to watch thought. And then, but only as I am aware, and this is key, only as I'm aware of this resistance. Once I'm aware of this resistance and I've relaxed even just a little bit, then you can begin to start doing what is in your power and refusing to do what is not. Because this idea of what I've described, there's no resistance without insistence, No insistence without resistance, no want without no want, no want. That seems like a dead end. What's going to happen? Who am I without what I want? Who am I without the demands I have that one day I'm completely content with everyone and everything? That's my future. Well, no, that's not your future. Your future is resisting everything that challenges that dream. But if I want a real life in what is truly timeless, then I have to understand I have to start in the right place when I'm taken over by this resistance. And the right place is to first become conscious of myself. And once I'm present to all of those memories trying to make me a captive of their content and their plans, then I'll be able to see a little bit more about what's actually happening. Because there are times when bang or slow building bomb, I've got to do stuff. I can't just sit on my accolades and hope everything's going to work out. That's as insane as resisting. No, I have something to do. But what I do must be predicated on what I understand. If I'm doing something predicated on the understanding of the consciousness that created the condition, I'm a captive of it, and I will do nothing other than make myself worse. But if I act from my understanding, and the first understanding is to recognize I need an action that is not part of the old reaction. If I do that much, then I can begin to do what is in my power and refuse to do what's not. What's in my power? Well, let me sit down, and instead of letting every thought and feeling telling me what happened, what to do, and who's to blame, and what I have to do instead of doing that, can I just sit and calmly look at the circumstance, including my consciousness that doesn't want to be calm at all because it's a captive, and then just take a step at a time. Do what is in your power to do. Don't try to do everything at once to get rid of the pain. Then you're right back in that old consciousness. Don't try to get rid of the pain at all. Just deal with the particulars that are required in terms of your practical life. That's it. Don't get involved in trying to solve the suffering, because the more you try to solve the suffering, the more something in you believes it knows the solution to it. And again, I've said it 1,000 times. You don't know the solution to your suffering because every solution you get to your suffering gives rise to the next resistance you'll have. Just let it play itself out. But let it play itself out in front of your open eyes, in front of your open heart, your open mind that recognizes, there are things I can do here. There are things I have to do. My kid needs to go to school. I've got somebody that's sick. I need to be at work at a certain time. I need to be honest about whatever it may. That's what I have to do. That's what's in my power, to remain present to myself as opposed to trying to push a moment away. It is not in your power to change the resistance you feel to the moment. I'm going to say it again. It is not in your power to change the resistance you feel to the moment. That's what every reaction tells us. Every reaction saying, look, hey, guy, this isn't your power. You can just do this, reconcile that, get them, fix that. If I just do all that, then it's in my power to get rid of the resistance. It is not in your power to change the resistance you feel. But it is possible to change your relationship to the consciousness that's responsible for it. And you do that by remembering to remember yourself, by becoming a student of your own resistance as opposed to being a captive of it, as we've always been. You'll have to work with all this. That's why we have this school. That's why I give these talks. It's my own life. My life is no different than your life. My wife's life. Our lives are the same. We have the same possibilities, and we have the same problems. The difference is that some of us can begin to recognize that the possibility of transcending the problem doesn't start with finding some circumstance outside of ourselves that we can become newly identified with. The solution is to see that something in this consciousness walks around endlessly identified without knowing it, and that by the grace of God, along come all of these moments to reveal that consciousness. And with the grace of God, if we're willing to accept that moment, we can see our way clear of any of that conflict that goes with us as it does now. Let's take a quick break. I'm not sure how this works on streaming like this, but we'll take a quick break. No, we don't take a quick break, do we, Kate?
Yeah, you know what? We're not going to take a real break. You can take a pause while I
Okay,
come on by and just give a few quick announcements.
great.
So thank you, Guy. And yes, everyone else, we are going to start our open discussion with Guy right now. If you are on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand by clicking or tapping the hand icon, and that lets me know that you want to speak with Guy. I mean, raise your hand if you wish to speak with Guy, of course. You can also send a question in the question box, and I will read that to Guy. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, and if you are on Facebook or YouTube and you want to speak with Guy directly, you can actually come on over to GoToWebinar. You can go to guyfinley.org/class, and that will bring you right over to GoToWebinar, and you can join in the discussion here. You can also send a message in the chat area there, and I'm trying to juggle, going back and forth, but I'll try and grab your question from there as well. In fact, I do have a couple questions already from YouTube. So yeah, let's just, take a quick little pause. Let me just look at the list here really quick, make sure I covered everything. I'll just say one last thing. If you want to watch the replay of tonight's class, you can go to our GoToWebinar channel, which is guyfinley.org/channel. We'll get the replay up there by tomorrow morning. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, it goes up immediately after class, so you can just look for it in the video section. All right, guys, so I have 3 written questions, and I see John has his hand up in the queue. If you're ready, we can just go ahead and jump in, and maybe we'll just start things off with John. Does that work for you?
Works for me.
All right.
I'm stunned this is working.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, John.
Hey there, Guy. I'm glad to see you made it to Florida safely.
Thank you, John.
So I just wanted to share an interesting experience I had coming home from work today. I was out in Williams, which is in the country, on a very curvy road, and there were 3 cars in the oncoming traffic that crossed over the yellow line and into my lane, and they weren't back to back either. It was uncanny, what am I, chopped liver? And so John was quite resistant. What's going on here? I felt like I was in a video game trying to get home. About 10 minutes later, I was on the other side of Murphy and, getting closer to the house. And some funk song from the 90s came on, and John was having a good time listening to it. He had it turned up, and he was just totally identified with his state and asleep. And another truck, big maintenance truck pulling a trailer, did the same thing, came way over into my lane. I had to drive almost off the pavement to miss it. But because John was so asleep and identified with his happy state, he totally forgot to insist that person stay in their lane. And like 1 or 2 seconds later, something said to me, "Did you see that? Did you notice that you forgot to get negative?" And I'm not trying to suggest that the solution to unconscious resistance is funky music. I just wanted to share a interesting anecdote I experienced today. That's it.
Yeah, all I would say, John, is that one of the key features of that unconscious nature is that when it runs into this resistance to its own demand, that's where we become captives, without knowing it, of distractions. Distractions are one of the favorite ways that this unconscious nature keeps us from recognizing that we're running from the pain of this consciousness. So that when we lose ourselves, as we call that a good life, losing ourselves. John, I'm an ex Motown man. I'm down with it. I love music, but we must always keep our awareness about ourselves. We can give ourselves to something completely, but that doesn't mean give ourselves away. And that's what resistance always wants us to do. It always wants us to give our attention to what it says is the relief we need from the pain it's in. And of course, again, we give our attention to whatever that distraction or relief seems to be. And now we're identified with that. And the minute we're identified with that, it becomes an insistence. And anything that comes and challenges that then becomes the next thing we resist. So that's it. Let's go on, Katie.
All right, I am going to bring in this question. This is actually, there's a kind of a trail of questions and discussion on your last talk that was posted on YouTube. And I thought you might have some good input for this fellow. So I'm just going to send you the question there to your chat area. Do you see it?
I do.
And okay. So here's what this person says. So outside of listening to these talks, practicing these truths daily, is it okay to have goals and hobbies and sports you have been playing since you were young? Is the key to do the hobbies you love doing, but don't get attached on the outcome of the event? Basically, is it natural to have hobbies and goals outside of your spiritual life that are outside of God's work? I have a big bodybuilding contest coming up this year, and a lot of time and dedication is going into my training physically, but I'm caught in between two worlds of my spiritual and physical lives. I feel I'm being way too hard on myself as an aspirant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, the idea that you're caught between two worlds, it's not the world of physical and spiritual. It's two worlds of opposing desires. It's a consciousness divided. Those are the two worlds. Those are the only two worlds. Or for that matter, Legion, the 1,000 worlds. I have an idea about myself. One part of me wants to build my body. I want to be healthy. And there is a part of us, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't find something magnificent about what a specimen I am. And that's just part of growing up, being identified with the body. We don't set out, I don't think, to be identified with the body, but as we work on it to develop it, I know this was true in my day, as we set out, then the thing that we love then becomes something that we're afraid not to do because we're identified with it so much. So I become obsessed. It becomes a compulsion. And the compulsion is that I have to keep this going because now I have a desire to be in who I imagine myself being. So if you're following me, this desire to keep that in going now becomes a form of what? Insistence that I do it. I don't want to go do this, but you have to. So then we call that discipline. And there is discipline. Don't misunderstand me. I want everybody to understand I'm not saying no to anything other than to negativity. And even that's not no to negativity because you're not going to escape it. This young man, I'm assuming it's a young man, he's into bodybuilding, but he also has a love for the truth. And I want to make it clear, there's no disparity. The disparity is that I go into the bodybuilding world and I become the bodybuilding champion, and then I'm caught up in that, and then I leave that and I realize I went to sleep. I didn't do anything. I didn't think of anything spiritual. I was caught up posing or thinking or competing and looking at other bodies. I got caught. Now, oh God, I'm a terrible human being because I did that. No, you're not a terrible human being because you did that. You're experiencing what is terrible in this consciousness, that it's identified with one side or the other endlessly, and then judges itself for its identification. Imagine a consciousness that becomes identified with something, and then when it becomes identified with something, it judges itself for not being present to something else it desires. So if you can see that, go lift weights consciously. If you're going to look in the mirror and pose, do it consciously. Look at yourself. Do everything with full awareness. And if you even attempt that, you'll see that seems beyond my possibilities. I know the rightness of it. Chop wood, carry water. Wake up, chop wood, carry water. Why can't I do all of that working to be present, remembering the Father, remembering the Mother, the Divine? There are some men here that I play golf with. I know for myself, there's always an exercise. Not to get caught up, identified, but to have a first. And that's what I'm saying to you. If you have a first, and the first is to remember yourself, everything under that is in its right place. If you don't have a first, nothing's in its right place. Let's go on, Kate.
All right, we have about 15 minutes. We have Jane in the queue, and John Watson, your hand was up, but it went down. So if you do want to speak to Guy, go ahead and raise it again. And Guy, I also have 2 written questions, but I'm going to hop over to Jane first.
Hello, Guy.
Hi, Jane.
It's been a while, so I wanted to make sure that I keep you aware of my continuing gratitude. Um, and I'm grateful I can be grateful to you because sometimes it gets pretty rough out here.
It doesn't get rough out there. It's rough in here, Jane.
Rough in here. It's
Yeah.
rough in here. So I wanted to mention one of your wonderful one-liners that is really relating to not letting the moment do what it will do. And
Please.
that is, when you try to nail something down, you are crucifying yourself.
Yep. That's
And
it.
Jane knows a lot about that now, and you've articulated it so beautifully. So, thank you.
Yeah, Jane. Just work as best you can inwardly. Persist, persist, persist. And ever so slowly, but definitively, you'll have increasingly long periods of time, even in the midst of unwanted moments, where you understand everything is well. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And the more you understand that, the more relaxed you are. The more relaxed you are, the more realized you are, because now you're not fighting with anything telling you this shouldn't be this way or they shouldn't be like that. I can't say it enough in terms of that encouragement. Not to make something imagined out of it, but to enter into this other world that's already within us, that just awaits us, our entrance into it, so that instead of being paralyzed by resistance, all of that resistance becomes part of a realization that we're released from this old nature, this unconscious mind. Stick with it, Jane. All's well. I'm with you.
All right, I'm going to come on and read this question. I just sent it to you. This was a question that came in on YouTube. I thought you might have some helpful remarks for Teresa. Teresa says, what do you do when someone says something that makes you wonder what the point was, as it's very hurtful? Then they realized after and try to explain their hurtful remarks, but it seems totally unnecessary and disrespectful.
Hi, Teresa. Nice to speak with you. We don't understand, Teresa, what it means to be free. We think our freedom is our right to object, which it is. We think our freedom is right to judge those who judge us, which it is. But not one of those freedoms that we are given does anything to liberate us from a consciousness that is forever taken aback by anyone and anything that insults or otherwise disrespects it. We live from a terrible, terrible, terrible sense of self apart from everything. Everything we look at with our eyes, everything that moves through us, every thought, it sees everything apart from itself. And the truth is, we're not apart from that person who said that disrespectful thing and then we could see was just dancing to get through it so that we would be able to return to our so-called friendship. Teresa, make friends with the divine. Make that your first friendship. If you do something like that, if you worked at trying to understand that means, people come and say whatever they want to say to you. It'll all be the proverbial grain of salt. Not that you don't have interactions with them, not that you're free of judging them, because that's still going to come up, because that's part of the matrix of this unconscious nature, forever finding something at fault because of our superior sense of self. But everything starts to marry, everything merges, Teresa. And then the person who hurt you, well, what did Christ say? It just, love thine enemies. How can I love my enemy? How can I love this moment? How can I love what this cruel, harsh, evil person? Doesn't mean you love them like we're taught so-called the love today. That's all malarkey. Tolerance has nothing to do with love. And our fear of being intolerant has nothing to do with being compassionate. It all belongs to a consciousness trying to keep an image of itself in place. No, Teresa, find out what it means. How can I take that moment that is taking my life from me, which it is if I'm full of resistance, I've lost myself. How can I take that moment and turn it around so that I start to see, you know what? I wonder if part of the reason that was so hurtful, I wonder if there's anything in that that has any truth in it. And don't judge yourself. Just, I wonder if that person understands how much pain they're in. I wonder if I understand how much pain that person is in. I'm going to speak about that in great depth on Insight Timer coming up this Saturday. Then, as all that marries in, I stop separating myself, stop resisting, stop insisting, and those opposites come to this collapse as they are intended to. I'm a completely different person in those moments, and I'm taking something completely different from every last one of them, Teresa. How about that for a closing statement for this answer? Let me see if I can't take something new from this old moment. And to take something new from the old moment, I'm going to have to be a new person in it. That's what you have to do, Teresa. You have to find a way to do that. I'll help. Let's go on, Kate.
I'm going to bring John Watson on in just a second, but I just thought I would take the opportunity, since you mentioned your Insight Timer talk, to tell folks now, while they're all still here, that Guy does speak every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And Guy, it will be 11 a.m. your time on Saturday.
Thank you.
Just trying to drill that in, the time difference.
Yes.
But yeah, and so Teresa, everyone, here's the topic for our Insight Timer talk: 4 simple lessons in unconditional love. So it's going to be a good one. So yeah, I just want to make sure everyone knows about that. And you would go to insighttimer.com/live at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, and you'll see Guy there and you can get connected. All right, let's go ahead and bring John Watson in.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, John.
Always nice to see you.
Thank you.
The other morning in my twilight sleep, I was aware of what I can only describe as an incredible resistance. Physically, it was painful.
Yep.
And I was just wondering that how the resistance that we have can manifest itself in a physical pain. What's going on there? What am I missing? And I laid there and I watched it and I felt it, and then I don't know how long.
I got it. Let me answer, John. First of all, the way we are now, which is why we're working to bring about this integration of our parts. The way we are now, our body has natural resistance. Thank God for natural resistance. That's called immunity. Natural resistance. Somebody throws something, action produces reaction. Natural. Our body sees something and it will have a reaction to it. Now, a lot of these reactions, and we've seen this, I know we have, what's the old story? Death visits a city, tells the gatekeeper, I've come to take one person. Word spreads through the city. The next morning, the gatekeeper says to Death, I thought you said you came to get one person, but 50 people died last night. And the Death says something like, well, that's anxiety for you, or something like that. So the point is, here's this thought, John. The body clenches because the mind clenches. Once the body clenches, the mind reads the body clenching as the evidence and proof that it's under some kind of threat. So now the body's resistance that it picked up from the mind, thinking it had to protect itself. Now the body feeling all that. Now the mind picks that up. And you can begin to see how this could get tighter and tighter and tighter till a person is paralyzed, quite literally paralyzed. You've heard the expression paralyzed with fear. I'm describing it to you. Paralyzed with anger. And you can eventually see that human beings, their faces and their bodies take on this paralysis. They literally look like what their mind has done to them. Their body takes on the shape of their mind. Literally. So it's no big deal, John. Don't make a big deal. It's nothing. And there I was full of resistance. It was painful. My body was tight. Big deal. Get up. Shake it off. Use it. Don't sit and think about it. You sit and think about your resistance. It's not you thinking. You cannot solve resistance with thought because thought produces the resistance when all is said and done. Act, see, learn. Act, see, learn. Do that, you'll make discoveries. Your discoveries will liberate you from some of the pattern of that unconscious resistance. Let's go on, Kate.
All right. I have one last note. It's a comment that was made on Facebook by Sue, and I thought you might have some words of wisdom for her.
Yes.
So Sue says, I lost 5 family members in 6 months last year. I had no support, so I grieved. It paralyzed me for a time.
It's completely understandable. But if I go through that grieving process and I'm not changed, meaning my understanding doesn't change, then the grief has served nothing. I suspect that you're here, listening, working, studying, because you're interested in these ideas. Because, and this is true for every man or woman all along the way, my best ideas have failed me. The best ideas that people told me about grief, best ideas about getting through this, all that stuff, all of it needs to go into the trash can. I mean, literally, it needs to go into the trash can. And it needs to go in the trash can because we don't get through these moments with ideas. Ideas are hindrances. Thoughts are stumbling blocks because they stand in the way of me having the direct experience of my own consciousness, of me being able to observe myself and to watch this. So on one hand, of course you grieved deeply. It's unthinkable. 5 family members in 6 months. But at the same time, Sue, let's look at this, meaning you look at this. What happened? How does the loss of someone I love make me numb? Would love ever really be numb? Or could it be that maybe I can learn something about another kind of love because of what happened? And then the death of my friends and family, they serve something. Everything that dies is intended to serve something that's alive. And that includes the ones that we love. And if it doesn't serve the life in us, then that life, of course, it served what it served, but it didn't serve the totality of its possibility. So again, it's natural, but we want to move on from natural to supernatural, from what is daily grief, some kind of dark state in this world, into a relationship with another world that can see and understand all of that, and enter into a world, I might add, Sue, where you will understand while they're not here in their body, you did not lose them. Love cannot lose its own object. Love cannot lose its own object. You'll see all of this, Sue. I promise you, if you work. That's it, huh, Kate?
I can't believe it. We made it through.
So far, so good.
All right. So, Guy, before you quit out, let me just remind our viewers that we will be back on Friday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern, for a student study group. So we'll have 2 longtime students give some short talks, followed by an open discussion with all of you. That's on GoToWebinar only. And then again, you can catch Guy on Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific on insighttimer.com. And then again, for his Sunday class, will be just like we're doing it tonight. We're going to be back for Sunday class at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. I think that's it. So Guy, you can go ahead and sign off, and I'll sign off as well, and I'll take care of all the rest, Guy.
So
Nothing else for you to do.
turn off the sound and the picture.